this is Tiffanie Travels, where we help women and families travel, build wealth, and live richer. So today we have a special guest, Lily, who has traveled and lived abroad for 15 years and has now returned to the US. Hi.
Hi there.
So you can start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your channel and about the content that people can find there.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Tiffany. My
Yes.
name's Lily. My channel is called Tourism Lens, and it is all about conscious travel at the base of it. I talk about responsible travel, destinations, and also living abroad tips. And I share stories there as well as about my experiences.
Okay, so why did you leave the US or leave America originally 15 years ago?
Yeah. So I actually, at the time, I was an attorney and I was really burnt out. I felt like my life just revolved around the work and it wasn't the kind of work that I wanted to do. I just wanted a different kind of lifestyle. And I think that deep down, I've always wanted to live abroad to see again, because I've lived abroad before when I was younger, but not as an adult. So I wanted to know what it was like. And I just wanted a bit more freedom in my life, in my day to day. So I decided that I would take a chance and try it out in the Caribbean.
And did you find what you were looking for by moving abroad? Did you find that slower pace of life?
I did, yeah. I found a slower pace of life, but it gave me time to kind of even look into myself.
Mhm.
And I mean, there's so many lessons that come with moving abroad. You go in with one expectation and then you come out of it with completely different realizations, or like you actually really grow as a person. And I think it's so important to see just the world that's around us, when we're so insulated in the United States. And I think that when you go abroad and you see how other people live as well, it just opens up your mind to so many things. And so for me, moving abroad found me my next career. Like I figured out what I wanted to do, which was travel journalism and travel writing. And that's where it all started, and I think it's because I had enough space to kind of slow down. I had saved up enough money to take a break,
Mhm.
and I could actually just think. In the US I could never do that. It was always like, oh, I have to go to work, work, and then when I come home I'm drained. So yeah, I
Yeah,
guess
I
I guess
yeah,
that
I
is.
totally understand, and I hear what you're saying about just pausing and so you went to Jamaica first and
I
then you went
did.
to DR and then Belize?
No, I did Jamaica first, and then I did it like 2 months in Grenada.
Uh-huh.
And then I went to Belize, was much of a longer stint. And then Dominican Republic was last. Yes.
And then
Last and
why
longest.
longest? Why did you choose those places?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Jamaica, I chose because I had been there just about, I think, a year and a half or two before I actually decided to try it out. I
Okay.
had been there before, and I had such a great time, and it was just like it kind of spoke to me, like the culture spoke to me. I'm Ethiopian by origin, and I had always been curious about Jamaica because of the Rastafari connection, and
Mhm.
they really like worship our former emperor Haile Selassie. And I was just intrigued, like, what's the connection? And so I started digging into the history, and that's really what drew me to Jamaica. And then when I was there, I really felt like there was so much more to Jamaica than what we were being told in the press.
Uh-huh.
And even from a travel standpoint, I was experiencing things culturally that I thought was never shared. And this is like, of course, a long time ago, right? Now it's a little bit, it's better. And so I was going to, festivals in the mountains, like in Accompong Town, the Maroon Festival, I
Mhm.
had never heard of before. I was going to obviously reggae festivals like Rebel Salute, which you also never heard of back in the day. but everyone went to locally, you know. It was just a lot going on, the food, and then the different regions. You know, I was driving around with a friend, exploring like Port Antonio in the east, and then you know, Mandeville, the mountains, and then Ocho Rios. And it's just like so diverse, right? And I just completely fell in love with Jamaica. So I decided I was going to start my hobby as a photographer there, as a travel photographer.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And I had bought me a gear, you know, I was all, you know, a newbie. And then, and, you know, unexpectedly, I started getting photography gigs. I think it was because I had beautiful, shiny gear and I didn't really know what to do with it. And then from there, the writing came, and that was because I had met an editor here in the US. And so it was a slow, you know, very slow process. But I would spend winters in Jamaica, so I wasn't there the whole year because
Okay.
technically you can't do that as a visitor. You only have 6 months out of the year that you can
Okay.
stay in Jamaica. At the time, that's what the rule was. So I would stay like from Thanksgiving to like February or early March, and then when it was warming up in the US, I would come back, and that was my technique for like quite a while, you know, until I got a little tired of the split life, you know. But financially, that's how I made it work, so that I wasn't running through my savings. I was working 6 months out of the year here in the US as a contract attorney, and then I would go back and do my projects in the Caribbean for 6 months.
Makes sense. Yeah. So my family is Jamaican. They came here in the 80s, and there
Wow.
is so much history for Jamaica. Like even Ocho Rios, and a lot of the names are like Spanish names because it was a former Spanish colony. And then there's so many Irish influence in there. But I don't
Yeah.
know about the Ethiopian influence, so I'll have to look
Oh
into
my gosh, yeah, it's
it.
big. Yeah, I loved it because everywhere I went was like, you know, I was a queen. I was like, they didn't harass me, you know. They were like, they were like Ethiopian queen. I'm like, yeah, you know, they were treating me really nice, and I loved it. It was like fabulous. There's like a level of there was just this respect, right? Like, I remember going in a taxi cab. I was in, and this is a very touristy Negril.
Mhm.
I was in a taxi, and he just kept looking at me through the rear view mirror, you know, this Rasta, and I was like, what is it? And then he's like, where are you from? You know, and so I said, well, originally I'm from Ethiopia. He's like, I knew it. He said, I knew. He's like, you can see it in your eyes and whatever. I was like, wow, this is real. Yeah, yeah,
Ooh.
it runs deep. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. And also a lot of time in Dominican Republic. So I was recently in Dominican Republic, and I found it to be so costly. I was in Santo Domingo,
Oh,
and
yeah,
I stayed at a hotel, but I ate outside of the hotel because a hotel is going to be expensive.
yeah.
It's, so I expected the Hyatt to be expensive, but I left the Hyatt. I took an Uber like into town, and the locals were there, and I still thought it was expensive. I spent like,
Yeah, where did you go? Which part of town?
oh, okay, I don't know,
Yeah.
like the
Like, were you downtown or were you in the colonial zone?
I wasn't in Colonial Zone. I
Oh,
think
okay.
it was downtown.
Yeah. It's U.S. prices. Yeah, there's yeah, and this is after the pandemic as well. So it was already quite a little bit pricey before the pandemic, but then
Mhm.
after, it's definitely shut up. You know, inflation just like everywhere else. But the Dominican Republic, I mean, Santo Domingo is very different. Santo Domingo is like probably the most modern side of the country.
Okay.
And so there's certain parts of the city, like where you were, probably the Hyatt, I think probably the Hyatt in
Yeah.
Piantini or something like that,
It was
maybe.
close to there.
Yeah, so that's really where the wealthy
Okay.
part of Santo Domingo is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can tell. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, if you go to the colonial zone, which is also really cute, I hope you got to see it.
I didn't go this time.
Oh, okay. Oh, but you've been there before or no?
I've been to different parts. I've been to Punta Cana and I've been to
Oh,
Puerto Plata, but I didn't go to Colonial
oh,
Zone
make
in
sure you
Santo Domingo.
make sure you go next time. It's really nice to walk around. There's lots of cafes and shops and stuff. But and obviously some of those are Some restaurants there are tourist traps, but generally they're not like Piantini. They have reasonable prices.
Okay.
Because locals hang out there too. It's a big mix of like locals, tourists, like everyone goes to the colonial zone. Yeah.
Okay. So, did you feel lonely moving abroad into these places where you didn't know people?
Yeah. So in Jamaica, I had people. I had a small community of folks that I met from my previous trips. So some of them were were from Europe or Canada. There's lots of Canadians in Jamaica, and then there were local Jamaicans that I met, just from being a tourist in that area, and a local Jamaican family that owned a hotel as well in the area. But yeah, so it wasn't completely like I was by myself, but there were definitely times when I felt extremely lonely. And I think that's something that people don't really talk about, because at some point when you're away from your family and the place that most of the time you're okay, but there will be times when you feel like you miss all of it and you realize that this isn't your country. It's not your country, it's not your culture, and perhaps you're never going to be fully part of this place. Like there's that weird feeling. And for me, it's something I've had my whole life, because I was born in Ethiopia, but I grew up in West Africa, and then so I've never the question of like where is home has always haunted me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came to the States, when I was a teenager. I was 18, so for college. So it's like I have all these different places. And anyway, so there were times when I would be in my apartment in Negril, on the west end of Negril, and I would just feel like, okay, sort of now what? Like there was just like this hole that I felt, and I realize now that I think sometimes we have very high expectations of places. And maybe there's something missing in our lives that we expect the place to fix.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not going to fix it. You're the one who has to fix it. Like no matter where you go,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like for me, like I was, I had this pressure of like, oh my God, I'm getting older. I need to get married. I haven't met anybody worth anything. I need, am I having kids? Like all these different questions. And then I knew I didn't want to be in the US at the time. But so like, where was I going to meet this person? Like, and then everyone I was kind of around in Jamaica was just not it. Like it wasn't, it was a tourist area, like, and in hindsight, I probably should have gone to Kingston. But I don't know, to have a better social circle.
Uh-huh.
I think the quality of your social circle is really important when you move abroad. And it's
Uh-huh.
something that people don't give too much thought about. We get caught up in the lifestyle. We get caught up in a slow pace, nice, a more affordable, place to live for us, Americans. But we don't think about the rest, and it's really important to be around people who are on the same wavelength, and that are more like the kind of folks that you would be friends with anywhere, really. And I think it's also a reality that people who live abroad, who live, in their own countries, don't necessarily need you. They don't need you. They grew up there. They have their own, like, friends from school that they grew up with. They have these
Yeah.
whole social circles. I mean, especially in the Caribbean, like they have, anywhere really, but especially in the Caribbean, and they have their own parties and cliques and whatever, and then there's the class issues. So like if you if you don't have the same social class, they're not going to mix with you. It's just not done. Like it's just not. And for me as a travel journalist, I was talking to everyone. Like I didn't really care. I think it's also my personality, but I had friends from all social strata, the rich friends. I had the friends who were, servers in the hotel. I had friends, so I had the foreign friends, so I think there's really like cultural nuances that will impact like your quality of life wherever you move.
Yeah, and it is common Because I think in the US, we maybe move around more than they do in other cultures. And so you find, like, even Italy or Mexico or, yeah, the Caribbean, that they went to school there together for all of their schoolings. Like, they've known each other since, preschool, and then they know their families, and like, yeah, they're very, it's a tight knit community. And then coming into that, like you say, they don't need another friend, like, especially
Yeah,
one that doesn't speak the language or know the culture.
yeah.
They just don't need it. So that is something I wonder about when people move abroad. And like, how did you find friends in these places?
I'm very fortunate. I think through my work, because I was doing guidebooks. At one point, I progressed and I got a couple of contracts to write travel guidebooks. And so when you do that, you have to go knocking on doors, hotels, and you're in the neighborhood long term. So people start knowing you. When you stay longer, and people and they see that you care, and that you're really looking to do the right thing by showing their country, and then they start thinking of you differently, and they start accepting you into their circles. So I was very fortunate that way, and I think at Belize that's really what happened. I wasn't just there one time and gone. I was there over and over and over, and so everyone knew me. Everyone knew kind of my work, and they appreciated that I truly loved the culture, and I really was trying to experience everything Belizean. And there's a respect that comes with that when you do that. And then people start trusting you, and they take you in. So I have really good friends still in Belize that will I could show up, and they will be there. And so I think that once you are committed to a place and you really make the effort to integrate yourself, it's going to come. In other places like big cities, it's a little harder. Like say Santo Domingo, when I was there, in the beginning, I found a group called Internations, and it's actually it's a global network for expats, for people who move. Some people get annoyed when you say expats, but whatever, it's the same thing. Immigrants, expats, it's a group for folks like that who move to a place to work, because they've been assigned for a few years or because they just moved there, whatever. And so it is a gathering every week or something. I think it was kind of like a happy hour type of thing. And in the beginning, it was free, so a lot of people went, and I actually made friends that way. I met a whole group of folks who had moved from Mexico, from I think it was Guatemala, and then from Spain, like all of these like little that Hispanic, Latin origin places, but these were like young professionals, and they'd moved to Santo Domingo to work for a specific company for a few years. So there's that happening, and then you have locals who come to Internations because they want to meet foreigners for good or bad reasons. Yeah. And then so we created that same night. One of them was a Mexican who I'm still in touch with. He created a WhatsApp group, and he was like, "Guys, we're all new here. Why don't we just go out and experience different things, different restaurants, different whatever and whatever." I'm like, "Yeah, sure. It's better. It beats the hell out of like dining solo." So that's what we started doing. And then they would text like, "Hey guys, we're going to try this pizza spot today. Whatever. Who wants to go?" And it was like that. And then we even went on road trips. Yeah, we're going to the Samana Peninsula, which if you haven't been, it's like stunning, on the northeast coast of the Dominican Republic. So we would go for a weekend, and somebody had a friend's house that was available, and stuff like that. It was really fun. Like it made it like really nice and not lonely in a big city like Santo Domingo. And then eventually, as I was doing my book, it's really funny when you meet people in certain parts of the country. Turns out they have family in Santo Domingo, and it's just like it becomes how islands are.
Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes one big network and stuff. So I really didn't have a lot of trouble. I think also, I mean, not trying to prop myself or anything, but I think that when you go out with an open mind and and you expect good things and you have faith, you will attract the right people to you, and and I think I've been pretty fortunate that way. Like, yeah. Yeah.
Good.
There are bad people too, but like generally, I would say 99% of my experience has been positive. Yeah.
So you said you went back to Jamaica in the winters. Did you go to the same place, or like how did you find a place? Is it like an Airbnb? And then yeah.
Yeah, I asked around. I think that, you know, what happened, I don't know, it's been a long time, but I think a lot of times people here in the US or in North America expect to find things online. Like it's really funny. I have people I have people asking me on my channel, like, can you, you know, point to specific like place I can rent or whatever? And I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that. You have to go. Like you have to go and then you have to get to know, talk to people, whatever, and then you just, you know, let people know you're looking for a place, and then like people start telling you, oh, let me look over there, or maybe, you know. So that's pretty much what I did, and I found a place in the West End that's like a little community. It's like cottages, little cottages, and it's off road, so it's not on the water, but it was affordable. It was like about, I think at the time it was 400 US a month.
Uh-huh.
And the lady who managed the place was really sweet Jamaican lady. And so, yeah, it was fine for me. You know, it had a kitchen, it had everything. It wasn't like fancy or anything. It's not one of those modern condo buildings, which is another thing. Is that unless you're in a big city, you're not going to find that. Like
Okay.
if you live in
Only in Kingston. Okay, Santa's only.
yeah, but I think it's probably gotten much better now. But anyway, so yeah, so I found my places by asking around. It depends where, right? In Jamaica, that's how it was. In Belize, that's also how it was. In the Dominican Republic, it's a little more sort of modern or advanced. So there's a lot more Airbnbs in Dominican Republic, and a lot of people do that. So when I first went to Santo Domingo to do my book, and I didn't know too many people, I did Airbnb first. So I found an Airbnb in Gascoy, which is close to the colonial zone. And it just gave me a good impression. And it was actually run by two Dominican brothers who were running properties for their mom. Mom owned the properties. But they were super down to earth, very nice. And the first day I remember the older brother was like, I'll just show you around quickly, like what's around. And he took me in his car and showed me like, this is the bakery and this is the whatever and the supermarket. And I'm like, wow, this is like how Airbnb used to be, you know? And I stayed there, and because we kind of became friends, then they had girlfriends, we all became friends, and I just went back there over and over. But I have to say, it was a pricey way to do it, and I could do it because I was getting paid. I was there for work.
Okay.
But it's pricey because the Airbnb was something like $600, and that's for a room. That's not even like for the whole apartment. So in the end, I was paying the price of a whole apartment for it. But you know, I needed to get used to the place, so it was okay for me. It was like soft landing, you know.
Yeah.
And then from there, eventually, I started looking for my own apartment, which was a whole process. Like I was looking partly online. There's a website called Corotos, which is kind of like the Craigslist equivalent in the DR. And then I got really lucky that I saw an apartment. I was like, oh, this is cute. It was in Colonial Zone. I was like, is this for real? The photos look fake, right? And I had no idea if it was real or not. The person responded. It was a real estate agent. And it turns out it was much cuter in person. And it was like $600 for the whole apartment in the center of like the Colonial City, which is a really like prime location. So anyway, yeah, it you know, you have to get to know the place and then you'll figure out the rest. I think a lot of people want everything set before they leave, and that's just not the case often in many places around the world, you know.
Yeah, we're used to security. We're used
Security, yeah.
to
Convenience, security. Yeah, you gotta hustle a bit. Yeah, there's a little bit of hustling that goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be scary. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, you were in these different countries. How did you navigate the healthcare system? Like, what was the experience like? Like, did you have travel insurance or did you just pay out of pocket?
Yeah, I had traveling. Yeah, that was always the big, I think that would be the biggest headache of going abroad. I had travel insurance, but you know, travel insurance only covers so much. So,
Mhm.
you know, I was pretty much praying I didn't have a major, major health issue. But I also had my like just basic healthcare here in the US. So just in case of emergencies. But I didn't have like your typical full-on insurance policy that you get with an employer in the US. I didn't have that because I was pretty much a freelancer.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as primary care, that's not a worry. Like that's super affordable abroad. Like in the places that I lived in, you could literally just make an appointment and pay out of pocket, and it wouldn't be more than like $200. It'd probably be less, you know. The lab tests are usually a little bit more pricey, but when we say pricey, like, I mean, I remember I did lab tests in the DR and it was like, I don't know, I didn't pay that much. It was probably like 100 or something.
Okay.
But you know, if you're a relatively healthy person, you're okay. I think it's always good to have like the emergency type of insurance that you can get, you know, limited insurance here in the States in case you need to fly back, in case you have an emergency, because you never know. But full-on insurance, you could also, in the Dominican Republic, you could buy plans for expats. There were companies that sell health insurance for expats, and you would pay something like, don't quote me on this, but I think it's something like $50 or $70 a month or something like that.
Okay.
It's affordable.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's affordable. But having said this, if you have really major health issues that require specialized care, specialized surgery or something, you would have to come back here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Generally in the Caribbean, the level of specialization is low. So it just depends what your condition is. Yeah.
Okay. So you are now or travel journalism. That you
Mm-hmm.
spoke about you were doing photography journalism in Jamaica. And then what else does travel journalism entail? Like how do you get into it? You said you met an editor, but then so did you write about, because sometimes I read these articles and they'll talk about different airlines, they'll talk about different
Mm.
experiences in different
Yeah.
countries. So is it like that?
So travel journalism there's various categories. So
Okay.
you have well, back in the day we had print, which was the print travel magazine that we used to, you know, love looking at. But these days it's okay, consumer facing. Then you have B2B, which is the business side of travel. Yeah, and then you have some that are a little bit of both. Most are digital these days. Very few print left. But it means in part you're sent to a destination for a specific reason and you report on it. You'd write a travel story, a travel narrative.
Mhm.
Or it could be you're reporting on something that's happening somewhere that's travel related
Okay.
without leaving the country. You know,
Okay.
you do it from your desk. It's a reported story, meaning you talk to different sources and
Okay.
you write up the story. Or it could be like a hotel review, or it could be a list of, you know, 10 hotels that are new hotels this year in whatever place. So it's a lot of like different things. Not all travel journalism is the same. Some is not well researched. Some is really well researched. And like, yeah. So I got into it doing both online and print, but mostly consumer facing. And my thing was always, you know, the showing the lesser known sides, the lesser known stories or lesser known places in the Caribbean. That's what I did for a long time. And then I progressed when the pandemic hit, and a lot of us who were in tourism were hit really hard, and there was no travel anymore and no writing about travel. Oh, I'm sorry. There's another part also, which is it's like content marketing. So you're writing copy for a brand, for a travel brand, or for a tourism board.
Okay.
Yeah, journalists also get to do that sometimes, and it pays better actually. But anyway, so after the pandemic hit, it was like, what now? And then I actually got a full-time position to write about the business of travel at this publication called Skift. It's an online trade publication. So at the time, there was obviously a lot of things happening with the tourism industry, and that was like the hot thing to write about was, what's happening to hospitality, what's happening, to local businesses, what's happening to aviation, a lot of that kind of, what's happening to destinations and tourism boards, and so I did that for almost 2 years.
Mhm.
And then from there, I had the opportunity to join Bloomberg News.
Oh.
Yeah, and so I cover travel. I cover travel for Bloomberg, and the difference there is that it's a mix of consumer and business.
Okay.
So it's travel, but it's a mix of both. So it's for our readers to understand, about places and things to do and stuff like that. But it also has a business underlying business rationale to things. And it's all over the place, but we're a small team, but it's very, very, very rigorous. Like it's really like what you're reading is 100% been checked by multiple people. Like it's that kind of like next level, journalism, which I think is kind of disappearing these days. But sadly,
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
but it's a funny field. It's not something that it's something I used to joke about and think, oh, I wish I could write about all these things. I used to love to travel, and I was like, oh, and we would joke with my friend Mary. We would like, can you imagine if this was our job to like, come back and write about our trips or whatever? And we used to
Yeah.
laugh about it, and it's funny. Yeah, so that's what I ended up doing. I don't travel a whole lot, but I do sometimes. Like I was in Mexico in December. And I was sent to review this new hotel by Marriott, because it's like, all these big brands like Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt are getting into the all-inclusive resorts in the Caribbean because there's so much demand for it. And they're making it luxury. So they're like saying, we're getting rid of the old model of like, all-inclusive, and we're making it more like, better food, cultural activities, and like making the place accessible to people. You can go out and do stuff in the destination, which is kind of smart, because that's what today's traveler wants.
Yeah.
But so anyway, I was sent to see if it was really true or if they were just, talking nonsense, or are they really changing things? Yeah. So kind of like a more of a review type of story. Yeah.
So does your YouTube channel tie into that too with like video journalism?
Yeah, I'm trying to do that. That's actually what I want to do this year more of. And initially, that's why I started my channel. It's funny. Initially, I started because I wanted to talk about like meaningful travel and why your travel decisions matter.
Yes.
The choices that you make when you're booking a trip literally matter on the ground. How does it make a difference for the person in the other destination that you're going to, and how to make better decisions. And then I started doing that, and then I don't know. I was like, oh, maybe I should just talk about some of my living abroad experiences as well, as a separate segment. And it just went bananas. Like that's, yeah. And I think it's because of the time, like everyone's thinking
Yeah.
about escaping for
Yeah.
good reasons.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay. Like, all right. So I've leaned a little bit into that, but ultimately, like, I don't want to get pigeonholed into just talking about living abroad. My next thing is I really want to go to places and do like sort of mini films where I show people literally like, yes, fun things to do, but here's how your choices also impact people there. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how would you say your quality of life improved by living abroad?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Well, for one, I was a freelancer, so I definitely had a better quality of life. I wasn't tied to like a 9 to 5. I think it improved because I was, I obviously was more in control of my day to day. I had more social interaction. In the US, you can go days without like talking to people unless you're working with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You talk to your work colleagues, but then, yeah, you have to like plan things ahead of time with friends, and it's just so complicated. But it's not like that overseas, and there's just more time to enjoy life, like day to day. And even if you're not that type of person and you're kind of a workaholic, like I am, you'll be forced to just like let it go sometimes, you know. Like, and I don't know if my quality of life improved as far as food, because it was, yeah, I guess, you know, in some places, I guess. But overall, I feel like, I don't know, I think it's kind of similar in the Caribbean, you know, because there's only so many times you can eat local food, like local, you know, rice and beans and whatnot. After a while, you want different things, or you want healthier choices.
Mm-hmm.
That's not always available. And what else? Yeah, my cost of living was so much lower. I kind of miss that. Yeah. 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 My expenses have like tripled since I went back to the US, which is expected, you know. But that contributes to quality of life, because then you're not worrying as much about money and what am I spending and all of that. I will say that in terms of maybe not quality of life, but the impact, like I think it gives you a fresh look on your values.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the biggest that I picked up from living in all of these different countries in the Caribbean, and especially in the Dominican Republic, is to really enjoy the moment. You know, people spend so much time, when we all spend so much time worrying about the future and planning for the future, but we don't stop long enough to really like be in the moment and just do what makes you happy in the moment, right? And be grateful. I mean, we're you know, yes, there's some level of gratitude, but the level of gratitude over there is just like, it's just, I think it's another level. It's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's everything is like, no, tranquila, you know, no, come on, you know, like, it's like, wow, how do you do that? You know, there's a hurricane coming. Oh no, let's have drinks. You know? It's just like a level of peace that I don't know. I never experienced that before. It's just I'm a worry wart, you know, because I bring that's the culture here, is like to be a worry wart.
Yes.
Oh,
Anxious.
anxious. Yeah.
So, how would you describe the culture differences between Jamaica, Grenada, Dominican Republic, and Belize, or are they all, similar?
No, they're not similar.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I would say Jamaicans and Dominicans are very similar.
Okay.
They have this really upbeat personalities, just, they have this, they're just very lively people. They love to make jokes and stuff like that. And they just take things as they come, right? And they're very brutally honest as well. I think they're very similar. You know, it's funny, like it's because of colonialism, obviously, but otherwise, it's kind of like the same personality. But I would say that the British Caribbean islands that I've been to, like Barbados, St. Lucia, Belize, even, which is an island, but it was colonized by the British. They're a lot more reserved. They're definitely a lot more reserved. I don't know if that's the connection, but that's what I've noticed in Grenada as well. They're friendly. They're very friendly, but they're very polite. You know, they're very polite, reserved. I found a lot of that. But in DR in Jamaica, it's like, this is what you get kind of thing. Like, I love that. They're very like straight shooters. But I think the Caribbean is often very overlooked, in terms of as a place to live. Granted, it's expensive because so much is imported, but it's from a level of like having peace and people being courteous still at this time in the world, it's a pretty unique place to go. Yeah, it's still a really great region to go to and just feel like, I have nothing to worry about kind of thing, Yeah. I really like that about that. Like, for example, in most places I went to, people greet each other. Like, I just love that. It's like simple things, right?
Yeah.
In the DR, it really shocked me with, like, every time you go in a bus, or you enter a shop or a business, there's always the person saying like, "Oh, buen dia," or like, it doesn't even matter if they don't know anybody in that place. Like, they'll just say buen dia, like, and some people will respond. Like, to me, that was always like, wow, like you're boarding a bus and I'm like, good morning to everybody. Like, that doesn't happen here.
No,
You know?
no, at all.
Yeah. Yes, I miss those things. Here you say good morning and they're looking at you like, why is she talking to me? Go away. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Even sometimes employees, I walk into this just like boggles my mind. I walk into businesses and I'm like waiting for it to be addressed, like a good morning, a hello, or something, and they
Absolutely.
look at me like I'm like, am I supposed? Has the culture changed? Does the customer, the consumer, say hello first now?
Yeah, so funny. That happened to me the other day. I was in Moynihan train hall in New York City, like catching my train home. And I was at this bakery. There's this bakery inside, Magnolia Bakery. And I'm literally standing there for like 5 whole minutes. And they're just like talking to each other and just completely like oblivious. I'm like, wow. Like, yeah. Yeah.
Businesses used to say hello.
Yeah. No, not anymore. No. So funny. Now they're doing you a favor. It's like, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so weird. Okay, so why did you pick now with these current
Yeah.
political times to
Yeah.
return to the US?
It's so funny. I left years ago and now everyone's leaving. But honestly, it was, and I did a video on this about why I returned, but mostly it was because of my dad. So my dad isn't well. And I just didn't want to miss out on this part. And I wanted to be there for him and help my mom as well, who's a primary caregiver. But yeah, my dad has dementia. So it just requires a lot of attention and just, um, yeah. And I honestly, I just wanted to be there. It's like, there's nothing can replace that time ever. So that really was a primary reason. And to be honest, I would say a close second is that we both, my husband and I, were just really tired of some of the things we didn't have in the Caribbean. And we just wanted a change of pace. I think that after so many years, everyone, it's natural to want a little change. And there were a lot of things that were grinding on our gears. It just gets tiring after a while. First of all, the heat. I mean, I know it's hot here too, but it's just the heat is constant now. It's just I can definitely see a difference in the climate from between now and 15 years ago, which is scary.
So you see a difference global warming in the summer, like you're saying the summers 15 years
No,
ago.
even year round. I mean, even now in the spring, it's super hot. There's just longer months of hot periods now.
Yeah.
And the storms are also much stronger. Although the storms weren't really a major factor, but it's kind of rare for a hurricane to hit. But it's becoming more frequent.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that the temperatures in particular were just becoming truly unbearable. And so there would be days when you just don't even want to go outside. And then you lose your quality of life, which is really unfortunate, because obviously we have the privilege of being able to move. But what about everybody else? Yeah. So, yeah, those are things I think about a lot in terms of tourism as well, the climate change and what we're contributing to it. But anyway, yeah, so that was a factor. And then the fact that, just wanting access to better things, just better opportunities, even work-wise. There were a lot of times when I couldn't travel for work because getting there was so complicated from where I was. It wasn't easy. I could easily go to Europe, but then if I wanted to go to the African continent or to Asia and stuff, it was just like, it just ruled out a lot of places for me. And I got tired of that.
Okay.
Yeah, like I was supposed to go to South Africa once and I couldn't because I was based there and they were like, oh no, we usually fly journalists from the US or whatever.
Okay.
And I'm like, that's so silly because Dominican Republic is very close to the US, but it's just things like that, it's just the work opportunities that I missed. And yeah, just variety of food, variety of things to do. There were no, everyone talks about the beach and it's great, but I can only sit on the beach for so long. Like, I'd love to have like a public park that's safe that I can sit in and enjoy and not worry about who's who's behind me or who's going to snatch my phone or whatever. Like, I think safety was becoming an issue. Generally in the Caribbean, it's just become worse, I think, when you live there day to day. Yeah. And, everything comes at a cost. Like everything has its advantages and disadvantages wherever you go.
Yeah. So what were some of the conveniences that you missed about, like, now that you're back in the US, what are some of the conveniences that you're like, oh my gosh, I could never give this up again?
I don't know if I can ever give things up again, but I think that it's nice to have right now. Like, like I like getting things very quickly. Like if I need something, if I need a new camera, or if I need, like I have a desktop now, which I love, and I couldn't do that before. I was on a laptop forever, and I can just get it in 24 hours, or less. That to me is like mind blowing after 50 years. And I don't have to pay extra for shipping and all of these things. I like that I have access to so many different foods, I can eat Vietnamese, or I can eat Thai, or Burmese, or whatever, right? It's
Ethiopian.
all Ethiopia. Oh my God, how could I forget? Ethiopian, I could eat my mom's food or even order, it's just, just having access to stuff is just that kind of thing, those kind of things that, it does matter. Like everyone has different likes and things. I gave up a lot of shopping when I left. And I think that as my career progressed and I had more speaking engagements and, events and whatnot, I needed clothing. Like I needed outfits, and I couldn't get that. And it was very difficult to get in the Dominican Republic or in other parts. In Belize, forget it. You'd have to probably fly to Mexico. In Dominican Republic, at least they had, they have shopping malls and whatnot, but it's so much more expensive because it's marked up. Everything's marked up. So you're buying Zara at like 3 times the price. Like that's crazy. And I did that for a while because I had no choice, right? So like here, the ability of like having access to things like that, not even buying, but even like renting, like rent the runway and all these things. That doesn't exist overseas. Like
Okay.
in the Caribbean, it doesn't exist. So like that kind of access matters to me. And being able to go for a walk and not worrying as much, and I think people minimize that. I think people are like, oh, well, it's dangerous in the States too. Well, yeah, but it depends where you go, if you're in a decent neighborhood and you're going out to your local park, it's fine. I mean, no one's coming up to snatch your phone because most people have phones here, right? Like it's not, but in Santo Domingo, if you go to one of the public parks or whatever, in the colonial zone is fine. But if you go to one of the larger, sort of more remote parks or whatever, in the city, some people go jogging there a lot, but I would never go jogging there. I wouldn't even walk because it just, I don't know, maybe somebody's going to come and steal my phone or whatever, snatch my phone. I don't know. It happens, not all the time, but it does happen. There's just a level of security, the lack of security that makes me very uncomfortable. That made me uncomfortable there. And I feel like it's different here when it comes to those simple things. Obviously, anything can happen anywhere, but generally it doesn't during the day in your neighborhood. Unless you're obviously in a crime-ridden neighborhood. But if you're not, you're fine, right? So this is subtle things like that I think people don't really know because they've never lived abroad. I mean, I know people who used to shove their phones in their boobs or their wallets, their money in the boobs and whatever. You can't live like that forever. It's really, it's too much. Like you should be able to just be free to walk around, without worrying about that. And unfortunately, I think there are some places in the Caribbean that's not the case. Like you have to, in the cities, you have to watch your back all the time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So how do you feel mentally being back? Because physically it's safer, and then like there's more conveniences, and you can get Amazon if you choose.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If you choose,
I'm
you
trying to wean off of Amazon now, but yeah.
same, yeah,
Yeah,
with the Prime membership.
yeah,
But
yeah.
you can get things and you feel safer. But what about mentally? There's a divisiveness here that can
Right.
take a toll on just your outlook, your energy, your mental
I
health.
guess I'm fortunate that I live in a blue state,
Oh,
and so I don't really feel that much here. Maybe if I went to DC,
mhm,
there's more of that. I try to monitor how much news I consume,
mhm,
which is something I've always done. But I think now, especially, it's absolutely insane the amount of news, like literally every morning. And it's hard also because I work in a newsroom,
mhm.
so I can't always tune it out because everything I do relates to the general news. But yeah, my mental state now is it's okay. I think because I'm focusing on family, I'm focusing on why I'm here, and that helps me. It helps me to remember like why we came back. And so, between the work and my dad, you know, um, I don't have much time to even worry too much about the rest. I do keep an eye on things that I can do something about, like like calling my representatives or whatever. I do it because I think it's important for us to stay involved. Um, but I try not to let it consume me, and plan fun things to do. So like in a couple of months, we have a trip, like say to Boston, and we're gonna go play tourist, catch a baseball game, things like that, right?
Yeah.
I think is what keeps me going. And then I have travels for work.
Okay.
I'm going to Brazil soon, which I'm very excited about.
Ooh,
Very
how
excited.
exciting.
Yeah, so excited. Um, and so yeah, I try to focus on what I can do as opposed to being consumed by the news. Like I refuse to watch all those commentaries and all that. No, I'm not doing that. I want to know what's happening, and I'll do what I can, to advocate, but I'm not going to be that all the time. Like that's not. So far so good. But yeah, I definitely didn't expect it to be so horrific, I think. I kind of did and I didn't. You know what I mean? Like I was kind of blocking it out.
Yeah,
Now the reality is like, wow. But plan B, we can always go back to Caribbean.
true. Okay.
Yeah. That's not the plan, but yeah. Yeah.
So you wake up now and it's a Tuesday morning. What does your day look like now that you're back in the States?
Yeah. So when I'm done, usually by 9 in the morning, I am at work. I work remotely.
Okay.
So I log on and I'm back to working on my stories that I'm reporting on for the week or for the next week. And yeah, it's just like being basically at work, and just, I have my teams online, and we, go back and forth, and then I work on my stuff independently. And that's pretty much what I do every day. Monday to Friday is my full-time job as a travel reporter. And then I might be taking calls, just like you're interviewing me now. I'm interviewing people for stories, and reading the transcript, writing the piece, deciding what goes in, what does. It's quite time consuming, and it's very involved. So I'm like fully focused on that. I have my lunch break. Yeah, just like a 9 to 5 worker, I guess, which is
Mhm.
funny because I was a freelancer for so long. And then it depends. Like on a weekday after work, just usually relax a little bit. Maybe read something or watch one of my series. I can't wait for White Lotus. And then yeah, on the weekends, it's like family stuff, and I don't know. Sometimes we go to the movies. Other times I'm visiting my dad. I
Okay.
visit him at least once a week.
Once a week. Yeah.
Yeah, when I can, when I'm in town. Yeah, and yeah. So you know, It depends. Every day's a little different. And if I'm traveling, well, I'm not here. I'm not at my desk.
And do you see yourself ever moving abroad, like Caribbean or another region for years at a time? Or you think the US is going to be home base and you can go away for extended periods?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I think that's what we're kind of talking about now. It's like, what's the long-term plan? And I'll say I'm not sure. It depends how things shake out here. But I think generally the goal is to move again eventually, maybe like in 10 years.
Hmm.
But who knows where the world will be in 10 years? I don't know. It's hard to say, the way things are going right now. But I think, since my husband is Dominican,
Uh-huh.
there'll probably some kind of tie back to the DR at some point, to Santo Domingo. And I don't know, we're talking about buying a place there just to have as a backup plan.
Hmm.
But I don't know that I would want to live there again full time. I'm not sure about that. Yeah, I don't think so. I'm sure we'd visit, but I don't know about living there. I think I'd want to try somewhere different. So yeah, so that's a good question. I'm still thinking about that. I think the possibilities are there of moving again, for sure. Especially if it continues this way for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We see
Yeah.
it. Yeah. As a
Are
lot.
you moving? Are you think you're moving?
I would love to. I have some ties here. My daughter's education. I
Oh.
really like her school that she goes to, and it's a school that goes from preschool to 12th grade. So
Mm.
I like it. And then also, her father loves it here. He's American, and so
Okay.
he's only been here, and he's only like really knows this culture. So I'm like, my parents are Caribbean, so I do feel like,
Mm.
I grew up in a Jamaican household, so a different culture is
Yeah.
not so foreign to me. Like I grew
Sure.
up with multiple cultures, but he is American.
Yeah. That's pretty common. But it's understandable. I think some of us like you and I who used to other cultures and grew up in different cultures have a easier time adapting.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just a matter of like, doing 2 weeks, and then you have a kid. I think having a kid in school is a definitely good reason, to
Yeah.
stay for sure. I think that's so important.
Yeah.
But maybe after that you could do short stints abroad, and it doesn't have to be moving. I think that a lot of people think they have to move completely abroad,
Yeah.
and I don't think that's the case. I think that you can figure out a situation where you could be away for a few months
Yeah.
and then come back. Yeah.
Yes, well, thank you so much for chatting with me. This has been really informative. I think I found a new career.
Yeah, let me know if you have questions.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
I should talk more about that on my channel. Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me, Tiffanie. It's been really fun talking about all of
And
this with you.
you are at Tourism Lens. So the link is in the description box and people can go follow you there.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye, Tiffanie.
Bye.
Bye-bye.